I stood in my daughter's driveway that Friday morning, keys cold in my palm, looking at 6 brand-new Ford F-150s lined up like soldiers, deep blue chrome still wrapped in protective film. The engines were silent, but I could feel their power humming beneath the metal. Behind me, the front door was still closed. No one had come out yet. No one knew I was there. My hands were shaking, not from the cold, it was almost 60 degrees, but from something else, something that had been building in my chest since yesterday. Since that moment at the table when my son-in-law laughed and said, "Jesus, Frank, that rust bucket's still running?" I looked down at my old Chevy parked at the curb. 19 years old. Dented fender. Exhaust pipe held on with wire. It looked like it had crawled here to die. I turned back to the trucks, and I thought, they have no idea what they're about to learn. My name is Frank Pearson. I'm 63 years old, and I'm about to tell you a story that'll make you question everything you think you know about the people you underestimate. The mashed potatoes were still warm when it started. I was sitting at the far end of Melissa's dining table, the end closest to the kitchen, where you can hear the dishwasher and smell the garbage disposal when someone runs it, not the head of the table. That spot belonged to Derek, my son-in-law, who sat there like a man who'd bought the chair himself, which I suppose he had. "Dad, you want more turkey?" Melissa asked, half standing, her hand already reaching for the serving platter. "I'm good, sweetheart," I said. "Really good." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She'd been doing that a lot lately, smiling in a way that made me feel like I was a guest in her life instead of her father. Maybe I was. I hadn't lived with her since she was 19. That was 22 years ago. Derek cleared his throat, the way he always did before saying something he thought was important. "So, Frank," he said, cutting into his turkey with the precision of a man who'd never worked with his hands, "you still driving that old Chevy?" I looked up. His tone was casual, but his eyes weren't. There was something behind them, something that felt like a test. I said, "Still gets me where I need to go." He nodded slowly, like I'd just confirmed something he'd suspected. "How old is that thing now?" 15 years. 19. 19. He let out a low whistle and glanced at Melissa. "Honey, didn't you say your dad's car broke down last month?" Melissa's face flushed. "Derek." "No, it's fine," I said, setting down my fork. "Battery died." "Happens. Battery died," Derek repeated like he was tasting the words. "Frank, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. No offense, but you're not getting any younger. And that car, I don't know if it's safe." Across the table, Melissa's older sister, Caroline, exchanged a look with her husband, Greg. He was a surgeon. Made $400,000 a year. Drove a Tesla. I'd met him twice. "It's safe," I said quietly. "Is it?" Derek leaned back in his chair, one hand resting on his stomach like a king surveying his kingdom. "Because I saw you pull up today, and I'm pretty sure I heard the exhaust dragging on the pavement." My jaw tightened. I could feel the heat crawling up the back of my neck. "It's fine," I said again. "Dad," Melissa said softly, her voice careful, like she was talking to a child. "If you need help—" "I don't need help." The table went quiet. Derek picked up his wine glass, a Napa Cabernet he'd told everyone earlier we were supposed to be impressed, and took a slow sip. Then he set it down and smiled. He said, "I've been thinking. We should get you into something newer, something reliable. I've got a buddy who runs a used car lot. He could probably get you a decent sedan for what, $5,000? Maybe less?" I stared at him. $5,000, I said. "Yeah. I mean, I know it's not a Mercedes or anything, but it'd be safe, dependable. You could probably get another 10 years out of it." Melissa touched my arm. "Dad, that's really generous of Derek." "I don't want a used sedan." Derek's smile faltered, just for a second. Then it came back, sharper this time. He said, "I'm just saying, and I think we can all agree on this, that car you're driving is an embarrassment." The word hung in the air like smoke. Embarrassment. I looked around the table. Caroline was staring at her plate. Greg was suddenly very interested in his phone. Melissa's teenage son, Tyler, was smirking into his napkin. And Derek was watching me with that same expression he always had. The one that said, "I win." "Is that right?" I said quietly. "Come on, Frank. Look at where you parked it. Right out front. It's the first thing people see when they pull up. Rust all over the fender. That bumper sticker that says, what is it? My other car is also a piece of crap? Very classy." Tyler laughed. Actually, laughed out loud. Melissa shot him a look, but the damage was done. I pushed my chair back and stood up. "Where are you going?" Melissa asked, her voice rising. "I'm done," I said. "Dad, please." I said I'm done. I walked through the kitchen, past the granite countertops and the espresso machine that cost more than my monthly rent, and out the side door into the cold November air. My hands were shaking as I dug the keys out of my pocket. The Chevy was parked at the curb, just like Derek said. Rust on the fender, dented driver's side door, exhaust pipe duct taped to the undercarriage. It looked like something you'd see on the side of the highway with a for sale sign in the window and a prayer. I got in and sat there for a minute, gripping the steering wheel. Embarrassment. The engine turned over on the third try, coughing black smoke into the air. I could see Derek watching from the window, arms crossed, shaking his head. I pulled away from the curb, the exhaust scraping the pavement, and drove. I didn't go home. I drove to the storage unit on the east side of town, the one I'd been renting for 6 years, the one nobody knew about. It was almost dark when I pulled up. The facility was mostly empty, just a few cars scattered across the lot. I parked near Unit 47, got out, and unlocked the rolling door. It went up with a metallic screech. Under a heavy tarp sat something I hadn't looked at in months. I pulled the tarp back slowly, the fabric stiff with dust. And there, it was. A 1965 Mustang. Fastback. Restored. Candy apple red. I'd bought it at auction 3 years ago for $32,000. Spent another 18 getting it perfect. Every bolt, every inch of chrome. The engine purred like a panther. I ran my hand along the hood, feeling the cool metal under my palm. This car was worth $120,000. Maybe more. And nobody knew I had it. I stood there in the dark, looking at it, and I thought about Derek's face at the table, about Melissa's embarrassed smile, about Tyler's laugh. And I thought, not yet. I pulled the tarp back over the Mustang, locked the unit, and got back in the Chevy. But as I drove home that night, something was already turning in my mind. Something that had been waiting a long time to surface. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my apartment, a one-bedroom walk-up above a Korean dry cleaner on Fletcher Street, and stared at the ceiling while the neon sign from the liquor store across the street blinked red, then dark, then red again. The apartment smelled like starch and mothballs. The radiator clanked every 20 minutes. The neighbors upstairs were fighting about money, their voices muffled but sharp through the thin walls. I'd lived here for 8 years. It cost me $650 a month, utilities included. The landlord, Mrs. Kim, hadn't raised the rent once. She said I was a good tenant, quiet, paid on time, fixed things myself when they broke. What she didn't know, what nobody knew, was that I could have bought the entire building. Cash. I rolled onto my side and looked at the photo on my nightstand. It was old. The colors faded to that washed-out yellow that happens when you leave something in the sun too long. Melissa was 7, gap-toothed, sitting on my shoulders at the county fair. My wife, Linda, stood next to us, her hand shading her eyes from the summer glare. She was laughing at something I'd just said. I couldn't remember what. Linda died when Melissa was 12. Ovarian cancer. Stage 4. By the time they found it, it had already spread to her liver, her lungs, her bones. We had insurance, barely, the kind that covers the basics and leaves you drowning in the rest. The bills came in waves, $60,000, $80,000, $112,000. They kept coming even after she died. The hospital didn't know or didn't care that she was already gone. I worked 2 jobs to pay them off. Days, I was a machinist at Kellerman Industrial, running a lathe for $11 an hour. Nights, I drove a delivery truck for a medical supply company. 3 hours of sleep, sometimes 4. I did that for 6 years. Melissa was 17 when I made the last payment. By then, she barely knew me. I was the man who came home at midnight smelling like motor oil and fell asleep at the kitchen table. I was the man who missed her choir concerts, her prom, her high school graduation because I was working a double shift. Was the man who couldn't afford to send her to college. She got a partial scholarship to state, worked part-time at a coffee shop to cover the rest. Met Derek her sophomore year. He was pre-law, drove a BMW his parents bought him, took her to restaurants I couldn't pronounce. She graduated, married him, and moved into a house with a 2-car garage and a yard big enough for a golden retriever. I stayed in the walk-up above the dry cleaner. But here's the thing. Nobody knew. 6 months after Linda died, I won the lottery. Not the big one. Not Powerball or Mega Millions. Nothing that would make the news. It was a state scratch-off. $5 a ticket. I bought 2 on my way home from a graveyard shift. More out of habit than hope. I didn't even check them until the next day. The first one was a loser. The second one paid out $250,000. I stood in the 7-Eleven parking lot at 6 in the morning, staring at the ticket. And I didn't feel anything. Not joy. Not relief. Just emptiness, because Linda was gone. And no amount of money was going to bring her back. I claimed it quietly, took the lump sum after taxes, $163,000, put it in a savings account and didn't touch it. Then I went back to work. People think money changes you. Maybe it does, if you let it. But I'd spent so many years living on the edge, juggling bills, skipping meals, wearing the same jacket until the elbows wore through, that I didn't know how to stop. So I didn't. I kept working both jobs, kept living in the walk-up, kept driving the Chevy, and I kept saving. I started investing, small at first, index funds, bonds, nothing fancy. I read books from the library, watched YouTube videos on my phone during lunch breaks. I learned about compound interest, about dollar cost averaging, about patience. The money grew. 163,000 became 200,000, then 300, then $500,000. I bought the Mustang because I'd always wanted one. Something beautiful, something mine. But I kept it hidden because somewhere along the way I'd realized something. People don't see you for who you are. They see you for what you show them. And I decided a long time ago that I didn't owe anyone an explanation. Not Derek, not Caroline and her surgeon husband, not even Melissa, especially not Melissa. The next morning, I woke up at 5:30, like always. Showered, shaved, made instant coffee in the microwave. Friday, day after Thanksgiving. Most people were still in bed, sleeping off turkey and pumpkin pie. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and opened my bank account. The number stared back at me. 847,293.14. I looked at it for a long time. Then I opened a new tab and started searching. It took me 3 hours to find what I was looking for. A dealership in Columbus, about 90 miles away. They had a fleet sale going. 6 brand new Ford F-150s, commercial grade, sold as a package deal for contractors. The trucks were identical. Deep blue, crew cabs, V8 engines, towing packages, built to work. The asking price for all 6, $240,000. I stared at the listing, my coffee going cold in my hand. Then I picked up my phone and called the dealership. A man answered on the second ring. Columbus Fleet Sales. This is Ray. I'm calling about the 6 F-150s, I said. The commercial package. Oh yeah, those are beauties. You looking to start a business? Something like that. Well, I gotta be straight with you. These are priced to move, but we're firm on the number. $240 for the lot. We've already had a couple companies sniffing around. I'll take them, I said. There was a pause. You'll take them. All 6? That's what you're selling, isn't it? Another pause. I could hear him breathing on the other end, trying to figure out if I was serious. He said slowly, "Let me get your information. We'll need to run a credit. Check, set up financing. I'm paying cash." Silence. Then, cash. Yeah, I can be there in 2 hours. Sir, are you serious right now? Dead serious. He laughed, but it sounded nervous. Okay. Okay, yeah. Come on down. Ask for Ray. I'll have the paperwork ready. I hung up, finished my coffee, and grabbed my keys. The drive to Columbus was gray and cold, the kind of November morning where the sky looks like wet concrete. I took the highway, the Chevy rattling at 70 miles per hour, the heater blowing lukewarm air that smelled like burning dust. I thought about Melissa, about the way she'd looked at me last night, embarrassed, apologetic, like I was a problem she didn't know how to solve. I thought about Derek, about that word, embarrassment, and I thought about the look on his face when he saw those trucks. By the time I pulled into the dealership lot, I was smiling. Ray was exactly what I expected. Mid-40s, polo shirt tucked into khakis, handshake like a wet fish. He walked me through the paperwork, kept glancing at me like he thought I might bolt. So, he said, clicking his pen, you said cash. You mean like a cashier's check or wire transfer, I said. I'll have my bank send it this afternoon. His eyebrows went up. This afternoon? That a problem? No, sir. Not at all. He handed me the keys to all 6 trucks. They sat on the desk in a neat row, each one tagged with a number. I picked them up, felt the weight of them in my palm. You want to test drive them? Ray asked. No. You don't want to test drive a $250,000 purchase? I looked at him. I know what I'm buying. He blinked. Then he laughed, shaking his head. All right, man. You're the boss. I signed the papers, gave him my bank information, and walked out to the lot. The 6 trucks were parked in a line, chrome gleaming under the gray sky. I stood there for a minute, just looking at them. Then I got in the first one, started the engine, and felt it rumble to life. It was 10:15 in the morning. By tomorrow, Melissa was going to learn something about her father. Something she should have known all along. I didn't drive all 6 trucks myself. That would have been impossible. I called Eddie Morales. Eddie worked at Kellerman Industrial with me, ran the CNC machine 2 stations down. He was 28, had 3 kids, and drove a Honda Civic with 200,000 miles on it. Good guy. Showed up on time. Never asked for anything. I caught him at home around noon just as he was sitting down to leftover turkey. Eddie, it's Frank. Hey Frank, what's up? I need a favor. You busy tomorrow morning? Lisa's got the kids. I was just gonna watch football. Why? I need you to help me move some trucks. There was a pause. Trucks? Yeah, 6 of them. I'll pay you $200. 3 hours of work, max. Frank, did you start a business or something? Something like that. You in? I mean, yeah. Yeah, sure. Where do I meet you? Columbus Fleet Sales. Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., bring your license. All right, yeah, I'll be there. I hung up and called 2 more guys, Luis from the night shift and his cousin Marcos, who did landscaping on weekends. Same deal, 200 each. They both said yes without asking questions. By 6 o'clock that evening, I had 4 drivers lined up, including myself. I sat in the Chevy in the dealership parking lot, looking at the 6 trucks still gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Ray had moved them into the back lot, away from the main showroom. He didn't want anyone else seeing them until the deal was done. Smart man. The wire transfer had gone through an hour ago. $240,000. Confirmed. The trucks were mine. I felt something in my chest. Not excitement exactly, something quieter, heavier. I was standing at the edge of something I couldn't take back. I spent the night at a Motel 6, off the highway, $49 a night. The room smelled like cigarettes and bleach, and the TV only got 3 channels. But I didn't care. I wasn't there to sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed, my phone in my hand, and pulled up Melissa's contact. My thumb hovered over the call button. I thought about what I'd say. Hey, sweetheart. About last night. No, I wanted to explain something. No. I put the phone down. There was nothing to say. Not yet. Tomorrow, they'd understand. Or they wouldn't. Either way, I was done explaining myself. Eddie showed up at 7:50 the next morning, 10 minutes early, wearing a Carhartt jacket and a Cleveland Browns hat. Luis and Marcos pulled in right behind him in a beat-up Silverado. "Jesus, Frank," Eddie said, staring at the 6 trucks. "You bought all of these?" "Yeah." "Why?" "Felt like it." He laughed, shaking his head. "Man, you're full of surprises." Ray came out with the paperwork, handed each of us keys, and ran through the basics. Fuel, levels, tire pressure, how to sync the Bluetooth. I half listened. I already knew what I needed to know. "All right," I said when Ray was done. "Eddie, you take truck 2. Luis, 3. Marcos, 4. I'll take 1. We're driving them to Briarwood Estates. Know where that is?" Eddie frowned. "That fancy neighborhood off Route 32? What's out there?" "My daughter's house." Luis whistled low. "Your daughter lives in Briarwood?" "Her husband does." Eddie glanced at the other guys, then back at me. "Frank, you want to tell us what's going on?" "Not particularly," I said. "You still getting paid $200? Then let's go." The drive took 40 minutes. We moved in a convoy, all 6 trucks rolling down the highway in formation like a goddamn military parade. I led the way in truck 1, checking my mirrors every few seconds to make sure the others were keeping up. The sky was low and gray, threatening rain, but not delivering. The roads were mostly empty. Black Friday. Everyone still at home or camped out at Best Buy waiting for deals on flat screens. I turned off the highway onto Route 32, then onto Maplewood Drive, the main road into Briarwood Estates. The neighborhood was the kind of place where every house looked like it belonged in a magazine. Brick facades, stone columns, circular driveways, lawns so green they didn't look real. The kind of place where people hired other people to hang their Christmas lights. Melissa and Derek's house was near the end of the street. 4 bedrooms, 3-car garage. A fountain in the front yard that I'm pretty sure didn't actually work but looked expensive anyway. I pulled up to the curb, put the truck in park, and sat there for a second. My hands still on the wheel. The other trucks lined up behind me, engines idling. Eddie tapped on my window. I rolled it down. "You want us to wait here?" he asked. "Yeah, just for a minute." He nodded and stepped back. I looked at the house. The lights were on inside. I could see movement through the kitchen window. Melissa, probably making coffee. Derek reading the paper or checking his phone. I took a breath, opened the door, and stepped out. The cold air hit me like a slap. I zipped up my jacket and walked up the driveway, my boots crunching on the gravel. I knocked. Melissa answered. She was still in her bathrobe, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. When she saw me, her face went through about 3 different expressions in 2 seconds. Surprise, confusion, worry. "Dad?" she said. Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," I said. "Can I come in?" "Of course." She stepped aside, and I walked into the foyer. The house smelled like cinnamon and coffee. Classical music was playing softly from somewhere deeper inside. Derek appeared in the hallway carrying a mug. He was wearing a polo shirt and slacks, even though it was Saturday. The man probably slept in business casual. "Frank," he said, and his tone was careful, measured. "Didn't expect to see you this morning," I said. "I wanted to talk." Melissa touched my arm. "Dad, about last night. I'm really sorry." "Derek didn't mean." "It's fine," I said. Derek took a sip of his coffee, watching me over the rim. "Look, Frank, if you're here because of what I said about the car, I'm not here about the car," I said. He blinked. Then, "What are you here about?" I looked at Melissa, then at Derek, then back at Melissa. "Come outside for a second," I said. "What?" "Just come outside." Melissa glanced at Derek. He shrugged. This was all very amusing to him. They followed me to the front door, Melissa wrapping her robe tighter against the cold. I opened the door and stepped onto the porch. And I watched their faces. Eddie and the guys were still standing by the trucks, hands in their pockets, looking like they'd stumbled onto a movie set and weren't sure if they were allowed to be there. All 6 Ford F-150s were lined up along the curb, gleaming in the gray morning light. Deep blue, chrome, perfect. Melissa's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Derek stared, his coffee mug frozen halfway to his lips. What? Melissa started, then stopped. Dad, whose trucks are those? Mine, I said. Silence. Derek let out a short, sharp laugh. What do you mean, yours? I bought them yesterday. Paid cash. His smile faltered. You bought 6 trucks. Cash. Those are brand new F-150s. That's what? 40 grand each? You're telling me you dropped $250,000 on trucks? 240,000, I said. Got a deal. Melissa was shaking her head, her eyes wide. Dad, I don't understand. Where did you get that kind of money? I looked at her. Really looked at her. My daughter. My little girl who used to sit on my shoulders at the county fair and ask me to buy her cotton candy. I've had it for a while, I said quietly. Derek set his mug down on the porch, railing, hard enough that I heard it crack. You've had it? What does that mean? You've been sitting on $250,000 and living in that shithole apartment above a dry cleaner? Derek, Melissa started. No, seriously. What the hell, Frank? You let Melissa work 2 jobs to pay for college. You've been driving that piece of shit Chevy for 20 years, and you've had this kind of money the whole time? Not the whole time, I said. How long? I didn't answer. How long, Frank? Since she was 17. Melissa's face went pale. Derek laughed again, but this time it wasn't a laugh. It was something uglier. You've got to be kidding me. You've had money since she was 17 and you... Jesus Christ. He turned to Melissa. Do you hear this? Dad, Melissa said, and her voice cracked. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't need to. Didn't need to? Derek's voice was rising now. Your daughter was working herself to the bone, and you could have helped her. And you... just... what? Decided not to? She didn't need my help, I said. She was fine. She was struggling. She was strong. Derek stepped closer, his face red. You're unbelievable. You know that? You come here, humiliate yourself at Thanksgiving, and then you show up the next day with a fleet of trucks like some kind of... What? You're proving something? I looked him dead in the eye. I said, I guess I am. His jaw clenched. Melissa was crying now, quietly, her hand over her mouth. And I felt it then. The full weight of what I'd done. Not just buying the trucks, but all of it. The years of silence, the secrets, the distance I'd put between us because I thought it was easier than explaining. I turned to leave. Dad, wait. But I didn't wait. I walked down the driveway, got back in truck 1, and started the engine. Eddie looked at me through the windshield, his expression somewhere between confused and concerned. I put the truck in gear, and I drove away, the other 5 following. Behind me like a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. We drove the trucks to a storage facility on the industrial side of town, the kind of place where people keep boats they never use and furniture they can't throw away. I'd called ahead, rented 6 spaces in a row, cost me $400 a month, but I wasn't thinking about that. I wasn't thinking about much of anything. Eddie pulled up beside me as I was locking the first unit. Luis and Marcos were still sitting in their trucks, engines running, waiting to see what came next. Frank, Eddie said, stepping out. You all right, man? You don't look all right. I turned to face him. He was a good kid, young enough to still think the world made sense, old enough to know better. He had that look people get when they're worried about you but don't want to overstep. That was your daughter back there? He asked. Yeah. She seemed upset. Yeah. He shifted his weight, hands in his pockets. Look, man, I don't know what's going on, and you don't gotta tell me, but if you need someone to talk to... I don't. He nodded slowly. Okay. That's cool. I pulled out my wallet, counted out $600 in cash, $200 for each of them, and handed it over. Eddie stared at the bills. I'd just handed him Monopoly money. Frank, this is too much. You said... Take it, I said. You guys did good work. Luis and Marcos came over. and I paid them too. They thanked me, shook my hand, and left without asking questions. Eddie lingered for a second longer. "You sure you're good?" he asked. "I'm sure." He didn't look convinced, but he got back in his Civic and drove off. I stood there in the empty parking lot, surrounded by 6 locked storage units, and I felt like I'd just fought a war I didn't know how to win. I went to the diner on 7th Street, the same one I'd been going to for 15 years. Same cracked vinyl booths, same smell of burnt coffee and bacon grease. Same waitress, Donna, 50-something gray roots showing under badly dyed blonde hair. She poured me coffee without asking. "You look like hell, Frank," she said. "Thanks. Bad day?" "Something like that." She set the pot down and leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You want the usual or you want me to bring you something stronger?" "Usual's fine." She nodded and disappeared into the kitchen. I sat there staring at my reflection in the window. The diner was mostly empty. Just me, an old guy reading the paper at the counter, and a couple of truckers in the corner booth talking about load times. My phone buzzed. I pulled it out. "Melissa. Dad, please call me. We need to talk." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I put the phone face down on the table and didn't answer. Donna brought me eggs, hash browns, toast. I ate mechanically, tasting nothing. When I was done, I ordered a slice of apple pie, more out of habit than hunger. "You gonna tell me what's eating you?" Donna asked, refilling my coffee for the 3rd time. "Nope." "Fair enough." She wiped down the counter, then glanced at me. "But you know what I think?" "I'm sure you're gonna tell me." "I think whatever it is, it'll still be there tomorrow, and the day after. So you might as well deal with it now." I looked up at her. "When did you get so wise? 3 divorces and 30 years in this place. You learn things." I almost smiled. Almost. She patted my hand. Rough, brief, the kind of gesture that said more than words, and walked away. I finished my pie, left $20 on the table, and drove home. The apartment felt smaller than usual when I got back. The walls seemed to close in. I sat on the couch, the same couch I'd bought at Goodwill 8 years ago for $30, and I thought about what Derek had said. You let Melissa work 2 jobs to pay for college. He was right. I had let her, because she needed to. Not because I didn't have the money, but because she needed to know she could do it herself. Needed to know she didn't need rescuing. Needed to know she was strong enough to survive without me. Because I wouldn't always be there. Because Linda hadn't been. I was 26 when I met Linda. She was working at a diner, not Donna's place, a different one, across town. I came in after a double shift at the plant, covered in grease, barely able to keep my eyes open. She poured me coffee, smiled, and said, "Rough day? Want to talk about it?" "Not really," she laughed. "Good. I'm tired of listening to people complain." I married her 6 months later. We were poor. Not dirt poor, but close. The kind of poor where you count pennies at the grocery store and skip meals so your kid can have seconds. The kind of poor where a broken refrigerator feels like the end of the world. But we were happy. Linda had this way of making everything feel lighter. She'd dance in the kitchen while making dinner, singing off-key to the radio. She'd leave notes in my lunchbox, stupid stuff, like, "You're my favorite weirdo," or "Don't work too hard, handsome." When Melissa was born, Linda cried for an hour straight. Not sad crying, happy crying. She held that baby like she was made of glass and said, "We made this, Frank. We made a person." I thought we had forever. We had 12 years. The cancer came fast. One day she was fine. Tired maybe, but fine. The next day she was coughing blood. By the time we got to the hospital, the doctors were using words like aggressive and inoperable. I remember sitting in the oncologist's office, listening to him explain treatment options, survival rates, quality of life. Linda held my hand the whole time, squeezing so hard, I thought my fingers might break. When we got home, she sat Melissa down and told her, "I'm sick, baby," she said. "Really sick, and I'm going to fight as hard as I can, but..." She didn't finish the sentence. Melissa was 12. She didn't cry. She just nodded, like she'd already figured it out and was waiting for us to catch up. That night, after Melissa went to bed, Linda and I sat on the porch. It was summer, fireflies in the yard, crickets chirping. "Frank," she said quietly. "Yeah? When I'm gone. Don't. Listen to me." She turned to face me, her eyes fierce. "When I'm gone, you can't fall apart. Melissa needs you. She needs you to be strong. She needs you to teach her how to survive. I don't know how to do that." "Yes, you do." She touched my face, her palm warm against my cheek. "You're the strongest person I know, and you're going to show her how to be strong too. What if I can't?" "You can," she said. "You will." She died 3 months later. And I kept my promise. I didn't fall apart. I worked. I paid the bills. I showed up. And when the lottery ticket paid out, I didn't tell Melissa because I didn't want her to think money was the answer. I didn't want her to grow up soft. I didn't want her to need me, or anyone, to survive. I wanted her to be strong, like Linda. But sitting there in my apartment staring at the photo on the nightstand, I wondered if I'd gotten it wrong. If maybe strength wasn't about doing it alone. If maybe I'd confused survival with connection. And if maybe, in trying to teach Melissa to stand on her own, I'd taught her that she had to. My phone buzzed again. "Melissa. Dad, please, I don't understand. Just talk to me." I picked up the phone. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't know what to say. I didn't call her back that night. Instead, I opened my laptop and started looking through old emails, bank statements, investment reports. I pulled up the account summary and stared at the number again. $607,293.14. It was smaller now after buying the trucks. But it was still more money than most people saw in a lifetime, and I'd spent 20 years pretending I didn't have it. I thought about the Mustang sitting in the storage unit, about the trucks lined up in their spaces, about this apartment with its cracked linoleum, and I thought about Derek's face when he saw those trucks. And I thought about Melissa's. The look of betrayal, confusion. Why didn't you tell me? I closed the laptop. Tomorrow I'd figure out what to say. Tomorrow I'd try to explain. But tonight, I just sat there in the dark, listening to the couple upstairs fight about money. And I thought about all the ways love gets complicated when you're trying to protect someone from the world. Even when the thing you're protecting them from is yourself. I woke up Sunday morning to someone pounding on my door. For a second, I thought I'd dreamed it. Then it came again. 3 hard knocks that rattled the frame. I rolled out of bed, pulled on a pair of jeans, and shuffled to the door. The clock on the microwave said 7:42 a.m. I looked through the peephole. Melissa. She was alone, hair pulled back, no makeup, wearing jeans and an old Ohio State sweatshirt I'd bought her when she was 16. I opened the door. "Hi," she said. "Hi." We stood there for a second, neither of us moving. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside. She walked past me into the apartment, and I watched her take it in. The sagging couch, the card table I used for a dining room, the single kitchen chair with the wobbly leg. She'd been here before, but not often, maybe 3 times in 8 years. "You want coffee?" I asked. "Sure." I went to the kitchen, filled the kettle, and set it on the stove. My hands were shaking slightly, so I kept them busy, getting mugs down from the cabinet, spooning instant coffee into each one. Melissa sat on the couch, her hands folded in her lap. "Derek doesn't know I'm here," she said. I didn't respond. We had a fight last night. A bad one. I poured the hot water, stirred, and brought the mugs over. Handed her one. She wrapped both hands around it like she was trying to warm herself. "What did you fight about?" I asked, sitting in the kitchen chair I'd dragged over. "You." I nodded. Figured. She took a sip, winced at the heat, and set the mug on the floor. "Dad, I need you to explain something to me." "Okay." "Why didn't you tell me? About the money?" I looked down at my own mug. The coffee was too hot to drink, so I just held it. "I don't know," I said. "That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got." She leaned forward, her elbows on her knees. "Derek thinks you're punishing me." That you were holding on to the money out of spite or, I don't know, some kind of twisted lesson. What do you think? She looked at me and her eyes were red. I think I don't know my own father. That hit harder than I expected. You know me, I said quietly. Do I? Because the man I know worked 2 jobs to pay off Mom's medical bills. The man I know drove a rusted-out car and lived in a walk-up and never complained. But apparently that man also had enough money to buy 6 brand-new trucks and just, what, decided not to use it? It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? I set my mug down on the floor and rubbed my face. I was tired. Bone-deep tired. The kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. When your mom died, I said slowly, I made her a promise. I promised I'd take care of you. I promised I'd teach you how to survive, how to stand on your own. And you thought letting me struggle was the way to do that? Because the world's hard, Melissa. And I wanted you to know you could handle it. I wanted you to know you didn't need anyone to save you. Her voice cracked. I didn't need saving, Dad. I needed help. You got through it. I got through it because I didn't have a choice. Exactly. She stared at me. You're serious right now? Yeah. You actually think that making me work 2 jobs, that letting me stress about tuition and rent and every goddamn bill, you think that made me stronger? It did. It made me exhausted, Dad. It made me feel alone. I looked away. And now I find out you could have helped me the whole time and you just chose not to. Her voice was shaking now. Do you have any idea how that feels? I was trying to protect you. From what? From depending on me. She let out a bitter laugh. Well, mission accomplished. We sat in silence for a minute. Then Melissa said, Mom wouldn't have wanted this. I looked up sharply. Don't. She wouldn't have. She would have wanted you to tell me. She would have wanted you to let me in. You don't know what she would have wanted. Yes, I do. Because, Dad, I was there when she was dying, and I heard what she said to you. My chest tightened. You were 12. I was old enough to remember. She leaned forward again, her eyes locked on mine. She told you not to fall apart. She told you to be strong for me. But she didn't tell you to shut me out. I didn't shut you out. Yes, you did. You shut me out the day she died, and you never let me back in. I stood up, suddenly needing to move. I walked to the window, looked out at the street. Below, a couple was walking a dog. Sunday morning, normal life. I did the best I could, I said. I know, Melissa said softly, but your best wasn't enough. She left 20 minutes later. I didn't try to stop her. She stood at the door, her hand on the knob, and said, Derek wants me to cut you off. He says you're manipulative, that the truck thing was some kind of power play. And what do you think? I asked. She didn't answer right away. Then, I think you're broken, Dad. And I think you've been broken for a long time. But I don't know how to fix you. I'm not asking you to. I know. That's the problem. She left. I stood there in the empty apartment, listening to her footsteps fade down the hall, and I thought about what she'd said. Your best wasn't enough. I spent the rest of Sunday doing nothing. Just sat on the couch, staring at the wall, replaying the conversation over and over in my head. By evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my keys and drove to the storage unit. Not the one with the trucks, but the one with the Mustang. I unlocked the door, rolled it up, and pulled the tarp off slowly. The car sat there in the dim light, perfect and untouched. Candy apple red, chrome gleaming. Every inch of it, exactly the way I'd left it 3 months ago. I got in, ran my hand over the steering wheel. Linda and I used to talk about buying a Mustang. It was this stupid dream we had. Save up enough money, buy a classic car, take a road trip across the country. She wanted to see the Grand Canyon. I wanted to see Montana. We never did it. We were always going to. Someday. When we had more time. More money. But someday never came. I sat there in the driver's seat, and I thought about all the things I'd saved for, all the things I'd planned for, all the ways I'd tried to prepare for a future I was too scared to actually live. And I realized something. I'd spent 20 years surviving, but I'd forgotten how to live. Monday morning, I called in sick to work, for the first time in 3 years. Eddie texted me around noon. "You good, man?" I didn't answer. Instead, I drove to Briarwood Estates. I didn't go to Melissa's house. I went to the park at the entrance to the neighborhood, the one with the walking trail and the pond where people brought their kids to feed the ducks. I parked the Chevy, got out, and walked. It was cold. The sky was low and gray, same as it had been all week. My breath came out in clouds. I found a bench near the pond and sat down. A woman was there with her daughter, maybe 4 years old, bundled up in a pink coat, throwing pieces of bread to the ducks. The kid was laughing, that pure, unself-conscious laugh that only little kids have. The woman looked over at me and smiled. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" I nodded. "Yeah." "You have kids?" she asked. "One. A daughter." "How old?" 39. She smiled. "Bet she keeps you busy." "Used to," I said. The woman's daughter ran over, tugging on her sleeve. "Mommy, look. That one has a green head." "That's a mallard, sweetie." They walked off toward the far side of the pond, the little girl chattering away. I sat there watching them, and I thought about Melissa at that age. How she used to grab my hand and pull me toward whatever had caught her attention. How she used to climb into my lap and fall asleep during cartoons. How somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being the person she reached for. And I'd convinced myself that was a good thing. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Caroline, Melissa's sister. We need to talk. Can you meet me tomorrow? Starbucks on Highland, 10 a.m. I stared at the message. Caroline, the one married to the surgeon, the one who'd looked at me with pity at Thanksgiving dinner. I typed back, "Why?" 3 dots appeared. Then, "Because someone needs to tell you the truth, and Melissa won't." I didn't respond, but I knew I'd go. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a pen and a legal pad. I started writing, "Dear Melissa." Then I stopped. What was I supposed to say? That I was sorry? That I'd made mistakes? That I'd spent 20 years trying to protect her from a world that took her mother, and in the process I'd pushed her so far away I didn't know how to reach her anymore? I crumpled up the paper and threw it in the trash, started again. "Melissa, I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if I can. But I need you to understand something. When your mom died, she made me promise to teach you how. To be strong. And I thought that meant teaching you how to survive without me. I thought it meant not giving you things so you'd learn to get them yourself. I was wrong. Strength isn't about doing it alone. I know that now. But I didn't know it then. And by the time I figured it out, it felt too late to change. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just asking you to understand that everything I did, every choice I did because I love you. Even when it hurt. Even when it was wrong. Dad. Read it over 3 times. Then I folded it up and put it in my pocket. I didn't know if I'd ever give it to her. But at least I'd written it. I got to the Starbucks 15 minutes early. It was one of those places that tries too hard. Exposed brick, Edison bulbs, chalkboard menus with drinks that cost $7. I ordered a regular coffee, black, and the barista looked at me like I'd asked for something exotic. "Just black coffee?" she said. "Yeah." "No room for cream?" "No." She rang me. Up, and I sat in the back corner, away from the window, where I could see the door. Caroline arrived exactly at 10. She was dressed like she was going somewhere important afterward. Tailored coat, heels, leather bag that probably cost more than my couch. She spotted me, nodded, and ordered something complicated at the counter. When she sat down across from me, she didn't smile. "Thanks for coming," she said. "Didn't think I had a choice." "You didn't." She took a sip of whatever foam-topped thing she'd ordered and set it down carefully. Her nails were perfect, manicured, the kind of perfect that takes time and money. "I'm going to be direct with you, Frank," she said, "because that's the only way this conversation works." "Okay, you fucked up." I didn't respond. You bought 6 trucks to prove a point to Derek, and in the process you broke Melissa's heart. She's been crying for 2 days. She can't sleep. She won't eat. Derek's telling her you're toxic, that she needs to cut you off completely. And what are you telling her? I asked. Caroline leaned back in her chair. I'm telling her it's more complicated than that. Why? Because I know something she doesn't. I waited. She pulled out her phone, scrolled for a second, then turned it toward me. On the screen was a photo. Old, faded, like someone had taken a picture of a picture. It showed Linda, younger, maybe early 20s, standing next to a Ford pickup. She was smiling, leaning against the hood. You recognize this? Caroline asked. No. That's Linda's truck, the one she drove when she met you. She sold it to help pay for your wedding. I stared at the photo. She loved that truck, Caroline continued. Used to talk about it all the time. Said it was the first thing she ever bought herself. Saved up for 2 years working at that diner. When she sold it, she cried for a week. I didn't know that. I know you didn't, because Linda never told you. You want to know why? I looked up at her. Because she didn't want you to feel guilty. She didn't want you to think you'd taken something from her. She wanted you to think it was an easy decision. Caroline took another sip of her drink, her eyes never leaving mine. That's what love looked like to Linda, she said. Sacrifice without resentment. Giving without keeping score. And that's what you learned from her. I don't understand what You think you were protecting Melissa by not telling her about the money, by making her struggle, by teaching her to be independent. She leaned forward. But what you were really doing was repeating Linda's mistake. It wasn't a mistake. Yes, it was. Because Melissa didn't need to be protected from depending on you. She needed to know that you trusted her, that you believed she could handle the truth. I felt something tighten in my chest. Linda loved you so much, Frank. And she loved Melissa. But she was terrified of being a burden. Terrified of being weak. So she hid things. She pretended everything was fine even when it wasn't. And you learned that from her. Linda was the strongest person I ever knew. I know. But strength isn't the same thing as honesty. Caroline's voice softened. When she got sick, she didn't tell anyone for 3 months. Not me, not our parents, not even you. She kept saying she was tired, that it was just stress. By the time she admitted something was wrong, the cancer had already spread. I looked away. I'm not telling you this to hurt you, Caroline said. I'm telling you because you need to understand something. Melissa doesn't need you to be her hero. She doesn't need you to sacrifice in silence. She needs you to be real with her, to let her in. I don't know how to do that. Then learn. We sat in silence for a minute. Then Caroline said, Derek's an asshole. I almost laughed. Yeah, he is. He's arrogant, and he looks down on people and he thinks money makes him better than everyone else. She paused. But he loves Melissa, and he's good to her, and he's not wrong about everything. He said I was an embarrassment. You showed up to Thanksgiving in a car that looked like it belonged in a junkyard. What did you expect? I expected my family not to care. Then you don't understand how the world works. She leaned back again, crossing her arms. Frank, I get it. I do. You didn't want to be flashy. You didn't want people to think you'd changed. But here's the thing. By hiding who you really are, you made Melissa feel like you were ashamed of yourself, of her, of the life she built. That's how it feels to her. That's what matters. I rubbed my face, suddenly exhausted. What do? I asked. You tell her the truth, all of it. Not just about the money, about Linda, about why you made the choices you made, about what you're afraid of. I'm not afraid of anything. Caroline gave me a look. Bullshit. She stood up to leave a few minutes later, slinging her bag over her shoulder. One more thing, she said. Those trucks? What about them? What are you going to do with them? I don't know. You spent $250,000 and you don't know? I shook my head. Caroline smiled, not unkindly, but like she'd just figured something out. You bought them to prove you weren't poor, to prove Derek was wrong about you. But now you're stuck with 6 trucks you don't need and a daughter who thinks you're crazy. Pretty much. So here's my advice. Figure out what those trucks actually mean to you, and then do something that matters. What? I don't know, Frank. That's your job to figure out. She left. I sat there for another 20 minutes, staring at my cold coffee. I drove to the storage facility after that, parked in front of the 6 units, got out and just looked at them. 6 brand new Ford F-150s, $240,000 worth of machinery I had no use for. I'd bought them to make a point. But what point exactly? That I wasn't poor. That I wasn't an embarrassment. That Derek didn't know who I really was. All of that, maybe. Or maybe I'd bought them because I was tired of being invisible. Tired of being the guy people pitied or ignored. Tired of living small when I didn't have to. But standing there looking at those trucks, I realized something. Buying them hadn't made me feel bigger. It had just made me feel more alone. My phone rang. Melissa. I stared at the screen for 3 rings before answering. "Hey," I said. "Dad." Her voice was quiet, strained. "Can we talk?" "Yeah." "Not on the phone, in person." "When?" "Now. Can you come to the house?" I hesitated. "Is Derek there?" "No, he's at work. It's just me." "Okay, I'll be there in 20 minutes." "Dad?" "Bring the letter." I froze. "What letter?" "The one you wrote me." "Caroline told me you've been carrying it around for 2 days." I closed my eyes. Caroline talks too much. Maybe. But she's not wrong. I drove to Briarwood Estates for the second time in 3 days. The sky was clearing, patches of blue breaking through the gray. It felt like the weather was trying to tell me something, but I didn't know what. I parked in the driveway this time. Not at the curb. The Chevy looked even worse next to the 3-car garage, but I didn't care anymore. Melissa opened the door before I could knock. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, but she was there, and she was letting me in. That was something. "Come in," she said. I followed her through the house to the kitchen. She'd made coffee, real coffee, not instant. She poured 2 mugs and handed me one. We sat at the kitchen island, side by side, not speaking. Finally, Melissa said, "Caroline told me about Mom's truck." "Why didn't you ever tell me?" "I didn't know. But if you had known, would you have told me?" I thought about it. Probably not. Why? Because it would have hurt. And I didn't want to hurt you. She nodded, slowly. "That's the problem, Dad. You keep trying to protect me from pain. But pain is part of life. And by hiding it, you're hiding yourself." I didn't have an answer for that. Melissa turned to face me. "I need you to understand something. I don't care about the money. I don't care that you didn't help me through college. I did at the time, but I'm not mad about that anymore. Then what are you mad about?" "I'm mad that you lied to me for 20 years. I'm mad that you let me think you were struggling when you weren't. I'm mad that you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. I was trying to make you strong. I know. But you also made me feel like I was alone." Her voice cracked on that last word. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the letter. It was crumpled now, the edges soft from being folded and unfolded a dozen times. I handed it to her. She opened it slowly, read it in silence. When she finished, she set it down on the counter and wiped her eyes. "Dad," she said quietly, "I love you. But I can't keep doing this." "Doing what?" "Guessing, wondering, trying to figure out who you really are. I'm your father. I know. But I need you to be more than that. I need you to be honest. I need you to let me help you. I need you to stop carrying everything alone." Really looked at her. My daughter, my little girl, 39 years old, strong, beautiful, broken in all the ways I'd taught her to be. And I realized Caroline was right. Melissa didn't need me to be a hero. She needed me to be human. I said, "Okay, yeah, I'll try." She reached over and took my hand. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't pull away. 3 weeks later, I pulled up to Kellerman Industrial at 6 in the morning. an hour before my shift started. The parking lot was almost empty, just a few cars scattered near the entrance, guys from the night shift getting ready to clock out. The building looked the same as it had for the last, 18 years. Gray concrete, small windows, a loading dock that had needed repairs since before I started. I parked the Chevy and sat there for a minute, engine ticking as it cooled. Then I grabbed the envelope from the passenger seat and walked inside. Eddie was at his station running a piece of aluminum through the CNC machine. The floor smelled like cutting fluid and metal shavings. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. "Frank," he said when he saw me, "you're early." "Minute?" "Sure." He shut down the machine and followed me to the break room. It was empty except for a couple of guys from maintenance eating breakfast burritos out of foil. I pulled out the envelope and handed it to Eddie. He looked at it confused. "What's this?" "Open it." He did. Inside was a set of keys and a title certificate. His eyes went wide. "Frank, what the hell is this?" "It's the title to one of the trucks. It's yours." "What?" "You heard me." He stared at the keys like they might bite him. "Frank, I can't. This is a $40,000 truck. I can't just take this." "You're not taking it. I'm giving it to you." "Why?" "Because you need it, and I don't." Eddie shook his head, trying to hand the envelope back. No way, man, this is too much." "Eddie," I put my hand on his shoulder, "you've got 3 kids. You've been driving that Civic for how many years?" 7. "And the transmission's going, right?" "But." "No buts. Take the truck. Use it. It's paid. For titles in your name. Done." He looked at me for a long time, his eyes shining. "Frank, I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything. Just take care of it." He pulled me into a hug, quick, hard, the kind of hug men give when they don't know how else to express what they're feeling. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Seriously. Thank you." "You're welcome." I did the same thing with Luis, and Marcos, and 3 other guys from the plant, men I'd worked with for years, men who showed up every day, and did their jobs and never complained even when their own trucks were falling apart. By the end of the week, all 6 trucks were gone. I kept the titles, the paperwork, everything organized in a folder, drove to each guy's house personally, handed over the keys, refused to take no for an answer. Most of them cried. A couple tried to pay me back. I told them if they ever tried, I'd take the truck back. Word spread through the plant fast. By Monday, everyone knew what I'd done. Guys I barely knew stopped me in the hallways, shook my hand, thanked me for what I'd done for their friends. The plant manager called me into his office. "Frank," he said, leaning back in his chair, "I heard what you did." "Yeah. That was a hell of a thing." I shrugged. "They needed trucks. I had trucks." He studied me for a second. He was trying to figure out if I was real. "In 20 years, I've never seen anyone do anything like that. First time for everything." He smiled. "Well, for what it's worth, you're a good man." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded and left. That Friday, Melissa called. "Dad," she said, "can you come over for dinner tomorrow?" "Is Derek okay with that?" "I don't care if he's okay with it or not. This is my house too." I smiled. "Okay, what time?" 6. "And Dad?" "Yeah?" "Bring the Mustang." I showed up at 5:50, driving the 65 Fastback for the first time in 6 months. The engine purred like a dream. The chrome caught the late afternoon sun. When I pulled into the driveway, Tyler, Melissa's son, was outside shooting hoops. He stopped mid-dribble and stared. "Holy shit," he said. "Language," I called through the open window. He jogged over, his eyes wide. "Grandpa, is this yours?" "Yeah." "Are you serious? This is a classic Mustang. This is, oh my God, can I sit in it?" "Yeah, go ahead." He slid into the passenger seat, running his hands over the dashboard like it was made of gold. "This is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Why didn't you ever show me this before? Long story. Can you take me for a ride? Maybe later." Melissa came out the front door, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She stopped when she saw the car. "Dad," she said, "is that the Mustang?" "Yeah." She walked down the driveway slowly, her eyes moving over every inch of it. It's beautiful, thanks. How long have you had this? 3 years. She shook her head, smiling. Of course you have. Derek appeared in the doorway behind her, arms crossed. He didn't say anything, but I could see him taking it in. The car, me, the whole situation. Dinner's almost ready, Melissa said. Come on in. Dinner was awkward at first. We sat around the table. Me, Melissa, Derek, Tyler, and Caroline and her husband Greg, who'd been invited as a buffer. The food was good. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans. Normal stuff. Derek didn't talk to me directly. He talked around me, asking Melissa to pass things, telling Tyler to get off his phone, making comments about work. But halfway through the meal, Tyler said, Grandpa gave away 6 trucks. Derek's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. What? I heard Mom and Aunt Caroline talking about it. He gave them to guys at his work. Derek looked at me. Is that true? Yeah. You gave away 6 brand new trucks. Why? I set down my fork. Because they needed them more than I did. That's... He trailed off, shaking his head. That's $250,000, Frank. I know. And you just gave it away. I did. He stared at me, and for the first time since I'd met him, he didn't look smug. He looked confused, like I'd done something that didn't fit into his understanding of the world. That's actually pretty cool, Grandpa, Tyler said. Melissa reached over and squeezed my hand under the table. Caroline raised her wine glass. To Frank, for finally figuring it out. Figuring what out? Derek asked. That money's only worth something if you use it, she said. We all drank to that. Even Derek. After dinner, I took Tyler for a ride in the Mustang. We drove through the neighborhood, windows down, the engine rumbling. He asked me a million questions. How fast it could go, what year it was made, how much it cost. I answered them all. When we got back, Melissa was waiting on the porch. Your turn, I said. She smiled. Really? Yeah, come on. She got in the passenger seat and I drove us out of the neighborhood onto the highway toward the lake on the east side of town. We didn't talk much. Just drove. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. When we got to the lake, I pulled into the empty parking lot and turned off the engine. We sat there, listening to the water lap against the shore. Mom would have loved this car, Melissa said quietly. I know. Is that why you bought it? Part of it, yeah. She turned to look at me. Dad, can I ask you something? Sure. Are you happy? The question caught me off guard. What? Are you happy? Really happy, not just surviving. I thought about it. I'm getting there. Good. She leaned her head back against the seat. I want you to be happy. I want you to do things, to live. I'm trying. I know. We sat in silence for another minute. Then Melissa said, Caroline told me about Mom's truck. I wish I'd known her better. I knew her. But I was so young when she died. I feel like I missed out on the real her. You didn't miss out, I said. You're just like her. How? Stubborn. Smart. Stronger than you think you are. She smiled. She sounds like a pain in the ass. She was. I loved her for it. Melissa reached over and took my hand. Thank you for telling me the truth. About everything. I should have done it sooner. But you did it. That's what matters. We drove back as the stars started coming out. When I pulled into the driveway, Derek was loading the dishwasher through the kitchen window. Tyler was back outside, shooting hoops under the porch light. Melissa got out, then leaned back in through the window. Dad? Yeah? Come back next week for dinner. Just come back. Okay. And bring the car. I laughed. Deal. She kissed my cheek and walked inside. I sat there for a second watching her go. Then I put the Mustang in gear and drove home. That night, I sat in my apartment. The same walk-up above the dry cleaner, the same cracked linoleum, the same everything, but it felt different, smaller, maybe. But not in a bad way. Just temporary. I looked at the photo on my nightstand. Linda and Melissa at the county fair. The three of us, back when the world made sense. I'm trying, I said out loud. To Linda. To the empty room. To myself, and for the first time in 20 years, I believed it. The next morning I called a realtor. I'm looking for a house, I said. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, yard, something I can fix up myself. What's your budget? She asked. I thought about the number in my bank account, about the trucks I'd given away, about the Mustang sitting in storage, about all the years I'd spent saving for a future I'd been too afraid to start. 300,000, I said. Cash. 3 months later, I moved into a small house on the west side of town. It had a garage where I could work on the Mustang, a yard where Tyler could shoot hoops when he visited, a porch where I could sit in the evenings and watch the sun go down. Melissa helped me move. So did Eddie and Luis. Derek even showed up, didn't say much, but carried boxes without complaint. When everything was inside, Melissa stood in the living room, hands on her hips, looking around. It's perfect, Dad, she said. It's a start, I said. She smiled. Yeah, it is. That Sunday I drove the Mustang to Linda's grave. I hadn't been in a while. Years, maybe. I parked near her headstone, got out, and stood there for a minute. The grass was freshly cut. Someone had left flowers. Probably Caroline. I knelt down, brushed some leaves off the stone. Hey, I said quietly. I know it's been a while. The wind rustled through the trees. I did something big. I gave away those trucks, helped some guys who needed it. I paused, and I told Melissa about the money, about everything. I ran my hand over the cold marble. She's okay. She's strong, like you. I stayed there for a long time, just sitting in the grass, talking to the wind. And when I left, I felt lighter. 6 months after that, Melissa called me on a Tuesday afternoon. Dad, I have a question. Shoot. You still have the Mustang? Yeah. You ever take it on a road trip? I smiled. No. Why? Because I think we should. You and me. Take a week. Drive out west. See the Grand Canyon. My throat tightened. Really? Yeah. Mom never got to see it, right? No, she didn't. Then let's go. For her, and for us. I looked out the window of my new house, at the garage where the Mustang sat waiting. I said, let's do it. 2 weeks later, we were on the road. Me and Melissa in the Mustang. Windows down, music playing, the highway stretching out ahead of us like a promise. We drove through cornfields and mountains, past small towns and big cities, stopping at diners and roadside motels that looked like they hadn't changed since the 70s. We talked about Linda, about the past, about the future, and somewhere in Arizona, as the sun was setting and the sky turned the color of fire, Melissa looked over at me and said, I'm glad we're doing this. Me too, I said. You know what Mom would say right now? What? About damn time. I laughed. Really laughed. The kind of laugh that comes from somewhere deep and doesn't stop. And as we drove into the sunset, the Mustang purring beneath us, I thought about all the years I'd spent surviving, all the years I'd spent hiding, all the years I'd convinced myself that strength meant doing it alone. I was done with that now. Because I'd finally learned what Linda tried to teach me all along, that love isn't about protecting people from pain. It's about showing up, being honest, letting people in. And sometimes it's about taking the long road, together.